Welcome to part 2 of my Network Plus Solve Like This series. In this video, I'll read and answer some of my Network Plus practice exam questions, but also point out exactly what you need to know in order to answer each question. And throughout this series, the strategy is simple. We first point out the key words in the question and then use the process of elimination. Also, I challenge you to pause the video for each question and try to answer them on your own before we walk through them. All right, enough talking. Let's go ahead and jump into these questions together. All right, question 1. A network technician is troubleshooting an issue where a user's computer cannot establish a connection to a remote server. The technician suspects a problem with packet routing across multiple networks. Which OSI layer should the technician focus on to resolve this issue? A, layer 2, B, layer 3, C, layer 4, or D, layer 5. All right, go ahead and spend a few seconds, try and solve it on your own. All right, so let me point out the key phrase here. Without a doubt, the most important key phrase here is suspects a problem with packet routing across multiple networks. And that alone gives you the answer here. It's also important to know the OSI layers for the Network Plus exam. They're going to be physical, data link, network, transport, session, presentation, and application. So for this question, it's pretty much asking which layer routes packets across networks. So let's go ahead and start eliminating them. First, we're going to eliminate A. Data link is responsible for local communication and data transfer between devices on the same subnet, but does not communicate across networks. Next, we can go ahead and eliminate C. The transport layer, that ensures reliable data transfer, error checking, and flow control between devices, but that one also does not route traffic across networks. And then we can finally eliminate D. And that is the session layer, which manages sessions between applications, including establishing, maintaining, and terminating connections, but that does not route traffic across networks. And that's going to leave us with B, layer 3, which is the network layer. And this layer is responsible for routing packets between different networks using logical addressing like IP addresses, which makes B the best answer. Question 2. A company is hosting resources in a public cloud environment and needs a solution to allow outbound internet access while keeping its private IP addresses hidden. Which cloud gateway is best suited for this purpose? A, Internet Gateway, B, NAT, C, Network Security Group, or D, VPC? Okay, go ahead and give yourself a few seconds to try and solve it on your own. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the key phrases for this one here. The first phrase is going to be outbound internet access, and the second is keeping its private IP address hidden. Okay, so let's go ahead now and do the process of elimination. And we can start by ruling out A, an internet gateway that provides a direct connection between a virtual private cloud and the internet. However, it does not handle the translation of private IPs to public IPs, which is required for keeping private IPs hidden. Next, we can go ahead and rule out C, a network security group that acts as a virtual firewall to control inbound and outbound traffic to resources, but it has nothing to do with keeping IP addresses hidden. And then finally, we can rule out D. And a virtual private cloud is a logically isolated, section of the cloud where resources are deployed. And while it facilitates network segmentation, it does not handle internet access or IP address translation. And that leaves us with B, network address translation, which is NAT. And that allows resources in a private subnet to access the internet while keeping their private IP addresses hidden. Question 3. A network administrator is setting up a routing protocol that uses link state advertisements to build a detailed map of the network's topology and ensure efficient data routing within an autonomous system. Which routing protocol is best suited for this purpose? A. BGP, B. OSPF, C. EIGRP, or D. Static routing? Okay, go ahead and try and solve it on your own. Okay, so the key phrases for this question are going to be link state advertisement, detailed map of the network, and finally, efficient data routing within an autonomous system. Okay, so now that we found the key phrases, let's go ahead and do the process of elimination. And we can start by ruling out A, BGP, which is a border gateway protocol that is used for routing between autonomous systems, particularly for internet scale networks. However, it does not rely on link state advertisements and focuses on path vector routing instead. We can then rule out C, EIGRP, and that stands for Enhanced Interior Gateway Routing Protocol. It's a hybrid protocol that combines aspects of distance vector and link state methods, but it does not use a full topology map, but instead relies on metrics like bandwidth and delay for routing decisions. So we're going to rule that one out. And finally, we can rule out D, static routing. And that's going to involve manually configured routes, which do not adapt to change in the network or use link state advertisements. So it kind of lacks the dynamic capabilities required in this scenario. And that leaves us with B as the answer, OSPF, and that stands for Open Shortest Path First. And OSPF is a link state routing protocol that's designed to build a complete topology map of the network. It uses link state advertisements to ensure efficient and loop-free data routing within an autonomous system. So that is going to be the best one for this answer. Question 4. A network administrator notices inconsistent speeds in performance on a switch port connected to a server. Upon investigation, it is determined that the switch and server are using different communication settings. Which configuration mismatch is most likely causing the issue? A. 802.1q tagging, B. Link aggregation, C. Speed, or D. Duplex? All right, go ahead and allow yourself some time to figure it out on your own. All right, so let's look at what I would consider the single key phrase that is enough to give you the right answer here. That key phrase is going to be inconsistent speeds and performance. So let's go ahead and do the process of elimination. So for A, 802.1q tagging, that is used for VLAN identification and traffic segmentation on trunk ports. It does not affect the basic communication settings like speed though. For B, link aggregation, that's going to combine multiple physical links into a logical connection for increased bandwidth and redundancy, but it does not involve mismatched speed. For C, speed mismatches can cause a link to fail to establish. However, most modern devices use auto-negotiation to align speeds, making this a less likely scenario. And that would leave us with D, duplex. A duplex mismatch can cause significant performance degradation, and that's key there, performance. That's why it's not speed as the answer, due to collisions and retransmissions. And this would align perfectly with the inconsistent performance and speed described in the scenario here. Question 5. A network administrator is reviewing the life cycle of a critical network appliance and discovers that the vendor has stopped releasing security updates and technical support for the device. What stage of the life cycle does this device most likely fall under? A, service request, B, EOL, C, EOS, or D, procurement? Okay, go ahead and try and solve it on your own here. All right, so let's look at the key phrase. I would say there's two of them here. The first one is going to be stop releasing security updates. And the second, I would consider technical support. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the process of elimination. And we can start by eliminating A, service request. And that's going to involve reaching out to the vendor or support team to address a specific issue or need during the active life cycle of a device. But based on the key phrases, this is not possible to do. We can then rule out D, procurement. And procurement involves acquiring a device or a product at the start of its life cycle. So different phase of the life cycle. So we can rule out that. And that is going to leave us with B or C. Now, these two are very similar, very, very similar. But the key phrase, stop releasing security updates, gives us the answer here. So we are going to rule out B, end of life, which is EOL. And that indicates the vendor has discontinued the production or sale of the device or product. However, it does not necessarily mean that the device or product is no longer receiving support. And that is super important to understand in this question here. So that leaves us with C, end of support, and that is EOS. And that's going to refer to the stage where the vendor no longer provides updates, patches, or technical support, but they could still be selling the product. Real quick, I'm going to take just 30 seconds to mention that if you're finding these types of practice questions helpful and are wanting to further supplement your practice exam studying, I do have a practice exam course on Udemy covering all 5 of the Network Plus domains. These exams are timed like the real exam and provide question feedback for each question so you know why you got a question right or wrong. If interested, you can click the link in the description or in the pinned comments in the comment section. All right, let's jump back to question 6. Question 6. A network administrator needs to track when a server becomes unreachable and generate alerts when its uptime falls below a specific threshold. Which type of performance monitoring is best suited for this task? A, configuration monitoring, B, availability monitoring, C, performance monitoring, or D, resource monitoring? All right, go ahead and give yourself a few seconds. Try and figure this one out on your own. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the key phrases to get this question right. The first one is going to be track when a server becomes unreachable. And the second is going to be alerts when its uptime falls below a specific threshold. So let's go through the process of elimination now. And we can start with A, configuration monitoring. That's going to track changes to device configurations to ensure things like compliance, but does not focus on uptime or reachability. So we can go ahead and rule that one out. Next, we can rule out C, performance monitoring. And that's going to evaluate the overall performance of a system, such as things like speed, latency, or throughput, but it does not monitor reachability. So between D and B. So we can rule out D, resource monitoring. While a real type of monitoring is actually not within the scope of the Network Plus exam and is not on the exam objective. So you would need to know the exam objectives in order to get this part right. And that is going to leave us with B as the answer. And availability monitoring, that's going to ensure that systems and devices are operational and reachable. And it tracks uptime and generates alerts when devices become unreachable. Question 7. A network administrator discovers that an outdated application running on a server has a known weakness that could allow unauthorized users to gain administrative access. What does this weakness represent in common security terminology? A, risk, B, vulnerability, C, exploit, or D, threat? Go ahead and try and solve it on your own. All right, so there is a single key phrase here that's going to give you the answer, and that's going to be known weakness. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the process of elimination. We can start with A, risk, and a risk refers to the potential for loss or damage when a threat or exploits a vulnerability. While related, it does not describe the weakness itself. So we can rule that one out. Next, we can go ahead and rule out C, exploit. And an exploit is the specific method or code used by an attacker to take advantage of a vulnerability. Now, the question does not describe the active use of an exploit, only the existence of a weakness. And finally, we can rule out D, threat. And a threat is any potential damage that could exploit a vulnerability, such as an attacker or malware, which would leave us with B, vulnerability. And a vulnerability is a weakness in a system, application, or configuration that can be exploited by a threat. And the outdated application with a known weakness that matches the definition of a vulnerability, making this the correct answer. And also, comptia tip here. There is a very good chance that you'll get a similar question of this that, has you choose risk, vulnerability, exploit, or threat. So it's very important to understand the difference between the four. Question 8. A network administrator is tasked with implementing a system that verifies the authenticity of users and devices before granting access to network resources. This system must also use certificates to ensure secure communications. Which concept best aligns with this requirement? A, encryption, B, PKI, C, self-signed certificates, or D, data at rest? All right, tricky one. Go ahead and give yourself a few seconds, try and solve it on your own. All right, let's go ahead and identify the key phrases here. The first one is verifies the authenticity of users. And the second one is must also use certificates to ensure secure communications. So now that we know the key phrases, let's go ahead and do the process of elimination. And we can start with A, encryption, and that's going to secure data in transit or at rest by converting it into an unreadable format for unauthorized users. While this is essential for security communications, it does not handle user or device authentication directly. Next, we can rule out D, data at rest, and that's going to refer to information stored on physical or virtual devices that is not actively moving through the network. It is unrelated to user authentication or certificate management, so we can rule that one out. And that's going to leave us with PKI and self-signed certificates. Okay, so we can rule out C. And self-signed certificates are generated without a trusted certificate authority, so CA. While they can provide encryption, they are less secure and do not address the broader requirements of user and device authentication. And that is going to leave us with B, PKI, which is public key infrastructure. And that's a framework for managing digital certificates and public key encryption, but it also ensures secure communications and enables authentication of users and devices. Question 9. A network administrator is troubleshooting a video conferencing issue where participants frequently experience delays, inconsistent voice quality, and interruptions during the call. Which network performance problem is most likely causing this issue? A, bottlenecking, B, latency, C, packet loss, or D, jitter? Okay, go ahead and try and solve it on your own. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and pick out the key phrases here. They're going to be delays, inconsistent voice quality, and interruptions. These symptoms represent one of these four possible answers, but let's go ahead and go through the process of elimination. And we can start by eliminating A, bottlenecking. And that's going to occur when a device or link cannot handle the volume of traffic, leading to things like slowdowns. We can then rule out B, latency, and that is going to be referring to the delay in transmitting packets across the network. High latency can cause noticeable delays in communication, but does not typically result in inconsistent quality or interruptions. And that's going to leave us with C, packet loss, or D, jitter. And both of these possible answers actually have very similar symptoms, but there's one key phrase that gives you the answer, and that's going to be inconsistent voice quality. Packet loss involves dropped packets, which can degrade quality. However, the scenario focuses on inconsistent performance rather than outright data loss, and that's going to make jitter a more fitting explanation for this question. And the answer for this one is D, jitter. Question 10. If you're still here, thank you for sticking along. A network administrator needs to perform a DNS query to retrieve detailed information about a domain's DNS records. And that's going to include the A, MX, and CNAME records. Which command line tool should the administrator use? A, traceroute or traceRT, however you want to pronounce it. B, netstat. C, dig. Or D, ARP. All right, go ahead and try and solve this one on your own here. Okay, so the key phrase here, without a doubt, is going to be retrieve detailed information about a domain's DNS records. And only one of these, by the way, can do that. So let's go ahead and go through the process of elimination. And we can start with A, traceroute. That command is going to trace the path packets take to reach a destination, and that's going to help diagnose routing issues, but it does not retrieve DNS records. Next, we can take a look at B, the netstat command. That's going to provide information about active network connections, listening ports and routing tables, but it does not perform DNS queries or retrieve DNS records. And finally, let's take a look at D. The ARP command is going to display and manage the ARP table, which maps IP addresses to MAC addresses. That has nothing to do with DNS. And that's going to leave us with the answer, which is C, dig. And the dig command is designed specifically for querying DNS servers to retrieve detailed information about the domain records, such as A record, which is address, MX, and CNAME records. And that will be your answer for this question. And that wraps up part 2 of the series. Please let me know if you find these types of videos that go beyond just showing practice exam questions helpful, and I'll go ahead and do some more. Also, and like always, let me know when you pass in the comments, as I love hearing when people pass their exams. But that's it for now. See you next time and good luck.